Believe it or not, DNA is not just a physical thing. In fact, the DNA is mostly immaterial thing. Our consciousness cannot exist on its own in this universe if it's not attached to a proper body, if you like, for that proper dimension or that dimension it's actually existing in. What do I mean by that? The consciousness penetrates into this universe through supermassive black holes, white holes, pulsars, supernovas, and other penetration points. That's where the DNA came from. That's where the life came from. And afterwards, the beings who are genetically, how should I put it, educated, they can do the genetic engineer and so on and so forth. Which means the consciousness uses the higher harmonics of the DNA to be able to operate from one body to another. I'm telling you this because none of us, actually, none of the people, at least not to the best of my knowledge, is understanding this properly. But this is the knowledge that we need to learn fast, grab fast, and apply, utilize fast to be able to make it. So, whereas we are seeing, this is the interesting part. We can reach with this functionality as we are only the 24th lowest dimensions out of 64, and I'll explain why. It's all the secret in the genetics. As we all know, there are two nucleic acids, right? DNA, which contains the master plan for building a human body, right? And RNA, which enables the body to follow those plans, right? It's the fingerprint of the consciousness, if you like, right? Life force. And as I mentioned before, it's coming through those penetration points. For example, this one was observed coming from the supermassive black hole of the Milky Way. It's incredible stuff. So the DNA actually consists of 4 basic bases or molecules, which are shortly called A, C, G, and T. That's the alphabet of the DNA. So the difference of those 4 codes is actually defining how our biological body are looking. So our difference with these animals and everything else, extraterrestrials, whatever you want to call it, is just how those 4 codes are positioned and written, if you like. For example, just a small example, we have approximately 98% similarity, genetic similarity with chimpanzees, 85% with dogs, 75% with mice, and believe it or not, 113 of the genetics actually is coming from the bacteria. And there is something which is very interesting. Out of 25,000 genes, as you can see, there are 250 which cannot be explained. They're just simply there, and the science has absolutely no explanation for it. Those are the ones which are actually lost. But there is also another perspective, which means human race, if you like. It's either a hybrids, or they're originally different, but they have lost the ability, if you like. Images like this, situations like this, testimonies like this by women which are afraid to step forward to share their experience are not rare. I've been tracking this for a very long time, and I can tell you it's very vast, but people don't like speaking about this stuff. So, in other words, just to keep the long story short, there are 2 codes. One code is primary and the other one is advanced code. This advanced code is literally the ones which is operating the subtle bodies. And by learning to control the subtle bodies or to use the abilities that we lost, we are able to connect with other entities out there, with other beings, other intelligence, and to bring proper information, and eventually to free ourselves from this prison that we call 3D reality and physical body. So actually what the mainstream science is referring as a junk DNA is our divine DNA. Right, it's a clever, self-organizing, self-editing, self-developing, self-correcting, and self-exacting software program. And it's actually tuning into a profound knowledge of the universe. It has everything written inside. For example, the oral sequence of this chemical basis, A, G, C, and T, determines the information which is relevant for building a mainstream and maintaining the organism. For example, I, it can be TGAC. For example, TTGG code actually can take a part of the finger, or how the finger is created. But for example, to create a part of the brain, it should be like TTAA plus G, CGC plus AT, CG, and so on and so forth, which means the complex, the program is just like writing a computer code. So those people who are familiar with the computer science, it's just an error of programming. In other words, every organism has a genome that contains all the biological information that to build and maintain a living example of that organism. It's all in there, in the cell. which means the human genome is all of the DNA that human cell actually, in one human cell, as you can see. And it has a 3 billion letters. A genome sequence has a 3 billion letters. It's a lot of A, C, T, and G, which means if a person starts to type 60 words a minute, 8 hours a day, it will take him or her 50 years just to type the code. That's how complex this thing is that we have, and we are not understanding properly. So, which means, excuse me, amino acids combine to form proteins. There are 64, again, these 64 possible codes of amino acids in our DNA structure. Out of those 64 possibilities, only 20 are turned on. And this is where the mutation is taking place, which means those are also called codons, 64 codons. As you can see, every of those codons stands for one subbody of what the consciousness has, which means there are 64 harmonics of the DNA, which means the physical part and all the rest, 63, is energetic. Which means, just for your comparison, harmonic is a signal or wave whose frequency is an integral whole number multiplied with the frequency of some reference signal or wave. The term can also refer to the ratio of the frequency of such a signal or wave to the frequency of the reference signal or wave, which means if this is a sign, as you can see, this is actually the harmonic, as you can see. And we are talking about 64 of those that our DNA actually has. 64-dimensional DNA. So which means DNA is not just antenna. It's a complex structure which consists of 64 antennas which are communicating profoundly with each other, with transmitting and emitting signals. It's just something which is incredible. It's creating geometry, it's creating many stuff. Which means everything that we can see in space, a Fibonacci sequence, which means a sequence which you can get the golden mean, that's also found in DNA. Everything revolves, which means 2 and 3 is 5, 3 and 5 is 8, which means if you combine the two previous numbers, you get the next one in the sequence. And everything is genetically designed properly, as you can see. There is nothing which is just put there on how should I put it, everything has a purpose, what I'm trying to say. In other words, we can see all this stuff in space, in nature, and we're talking about 64 harmonics of DNA. So how is this possible? For this, we have to understand cymatics. So which is the study of the wave phenomena. So this is very important to understand. So when vibrations of sound pass through a form of media like a sand or water, they set patterns it will follow. And the frequency increases, the media develops into more complex pattern, and I will show you. Which means as it goes, it gets more and more. For example, this is water. As the smaller, the lower the frequency is, the geometry is different. As the frequency increases, the geometry increases in complexity. Which means if you put a salt, or let's say a sand or water or whatever, and you introduce a frequency, this thing starts to get geometry. If you put one frequency, it will take one geometry. If you change the frequency, it will take another. But if you put back the previous one, it will take the same geometry as back. For example, this is with sand, as you can see. In other words, everything revolves to this. Emotions are our key sources to our lost powers, for better or worse, if you like. And everything actually, it's actually creating through those. So, which means, as you all probably know, we'll just take a few minutes with this. Humans experience only two emotions, which is love and fear. All the rest comes from those. For example, the bad one, anger, hate, jealousy, greed, vanity, self-loathing, addictions, manipulation, judgmental, and more, they come from the fear. Which means, as you can see, the vibration lobes, and as we are water inside, it does something to us. For example, the other frequency, which it feels nice, is good, is changing the vibrational field, and we can access stuff. And from this, actually, thing is coming compassion, happiness, self-love, kindness, supportive, unconditional love, balance, calmity, politeness, non-judgmental, and many more. In other words, family is the very important one. And then the whole humanity, in other words, we have to love humanity like we love our loved ones. Which means fear has a long and slow vibrational frequency like this, and the love has completely something else, which is the rocket and high frequency. And this is what is the answer.